All you have to do is tell us what happened from the very beginning. I recently volunteered to do an experiment conducted in a science lab in Florida. When I went in the lab, they told me to walk into the white room that was a few halls down. I went in the room and the door locked behind me. They told me via speakers on the ceiling that I was going to be in there for 3 days and that there was enough supplies for me to last. The room was the size of an average middle school classroom. It was a square room with white floors and walls. At one corner, I could see a book bag that I assumed had all my supplies. The creepiest thing about the room was that there was a man in the middle sitting on a chair. Around the chair there was a circle on the ground that said, "Do not cross." I said hello to the man in the chair. There was no reply. He looked very clean. He was wearing all white. He was bald and looked very old with his wrinkles on his face. His eyes stared straight at the wall left to the door. He was strapped to the chair with these thick leather bands. I went to the book bag and found some water, a couple snacks, 3 bags of meals, a book about science stuff, a ball, and a sleeping bag. I unpacked the stuff and organized it in one corner. I then went to confront the man. "How long have you been here?" I asked. There was no reply. He just stared blankly into the wall. He didn't even blink. The entire day, I was either bouncing the ball off the wall or reading a book. I tried my best to stay away from the man. I threw the ball at his head once, and he had no reaction. The next day, the room began to smell. There was a watch in the book bag. It said 3:00 p.m. When I took my eyes off the watch, I saw the man had unstrapped himself, and he was now standing up and staring at me. He stared at me blankly for about a minute until he grinned. He then asked me a question. "Do you want to play some ball?" he asked. I managed to get the word "sure" out of my mouth. Then we began to pass the ball back and forth. By the end of the day, we were having conversations about our lives and reading the book together. I had almost forgotten about the fact that he was unconscious the first day. I woke up the next morning to the sound of crying. It was the last day and I was anxious to leave. I noticed the man, I discovered his name was Bill, was curled up in a ball in the opposite corner. I went up to him and asked, "What's wrong?" "I'll never leave this room," he said, "and you won't either." And he had a knife in his hand, already dull with blood. He must have gotten it from the bag. He didn't stab himself because there was no blood on him. That didn't matter, though. He got up and began to chase me around the room. I screamed for help and stared behind me a couple times. He was always a few feet away from me, and I almost tripped a couple times. Finally, the scientist came running in and grabbed me. After they calmed me down, they asked me what happened. I told them the man began to chase me with a knife. "Sir?" said the scientist. "Yes," I replied. The man was dead. I felt as if all my air got sucked out of me. There was no way. I played with him. I talked to him. The purpose of the test was to see if people can cope with living with a dead person for 3 days, and you could obviously not do that. We think you were going insane. They showed me the room again to prove he was dead. He was. You could clearly tell he was dead. It looked like he was dead for weeks, maybe even months. I'm back home, but I don't think I'll be able to sleep. I am almost certain that man was alive. He told me things. He taught me things I've never known before. He taught me a trick to multiply big numbers in my head now. There is no way he was dead. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe the experiment drove me nuts. It did. I can't stop thinking about it. I can see the dull with blood knife. It's on my desk. If it's not real, it can't hurt me, right?